Welcome to the Digital Recruiter Podcast, the podcast where we share all the ins and outs of the recruiting industry, what it's like, all the crazy stories. I'm your host, Clark Wilcox, the founder of the Digital Recruiter and Digital Recruiter Talent Group. Today we have Travis Janko, the CEO and founder of GSD Consulting and Recruiting. His book, You of All People, just came out last week. You can find it everywhere books are sold. Amazon probably being the most popular one. Travis, thanks for being
Hey,
here.
thanks for having me, Clark. Good to talk to you again.
Yeah, congrats on, of course, it's always a pleasure. Um, Congrats on the book coming out, first and foremost. That's pretty exciting. And I think it came out just last Tuesday,
Yeah,
right?
it's the
So just about a
first.
week ago.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
officially out on the
Yeah.
first.
August on the first. Nice. I'm halfway through, and it's great so far. I'm excited to kind of dive in and talk about kind of how that got created and your inspiration for it. You have a ton of gold in there that I definitely want to cover some of that
Cool.
today. But first and foremost, let's just talk about how you got, your journey into getting into recruiting. What was that like?
Yeah, cool. And again, I'm Travis Janko. Name of the company is GSD Coach and Recruiting. We help growing SaaS companies hire the top 5% of salespeople fast. And how we got to this, it's quite an interesting story. I was a sales leader for about 25 years, Clark, and the last 10 years of my career was in the SaaS startup space. And when I moved to my first startup, I realized that there wasn't always a person to do the thing for you. When in corporate, there usually is. Like corporate companies I worked for had large recruiting departments. They could do what I needed. They could get me the people I needed. I was always a sales leader.
Yeah.
My first SaaS startup was a pretty small company, 35 people. Their goal was to go huge, go public, which we did, and I'll tell you the story. But to start off with, I was spending 5 hours a day interviewing people every single day that I didn't want to talk to and I didn't want to hire. And I wasn't with my team, but I had to interview them and I had to hire them because we had quotas to meet. And I
Yep.
went to the recruiting team no less than 10 times and told them, here's who I need. And they wouldn't get that person for me. They just wanted to get really cool culture fits. Um, so I decided to take matters into my own hands and I started doing research for months. I talked to some of the top recruiters in the country, um, everybody I knew who had done recruiting. So, I was never trained in recruiting, I was never a recruiter for a company. Um, but after I taught myself, I figured it out and I figured out how to source candidates. So I started getting up at 3 every morning, sourcing for 3 hours, then going into work. And fast forward from our 35 people, 3 years later, we had 600 people in our building. I personally sourced and recruited about 250 of those people. I was able to hit my quotas, hit my numbers, but I didn't get paid any extra. So saved the company a ton of money, I find out now. Um, so
That's everyone doing the math in their head can't believe it, but yes.
yeah, they I was making under 200 grand total, as in my role doing all of that. But we were doing what we needed to do. We ended up selling for 3.5 billion. That was my first startup, and so that hard work paid off really well. I thought that was what startup life was like. Turns out they're
Yeah.
not all created equal. So my next startup that I went to, Clark, and this is a long story, but it's going to make sense. It was a really
Yeah.
small customer loyalty SaaS startup. They had 3 inbound salespeople, and that was it. And their goal was to build an outbound department in Denver. So day one, I was the first employee in Denver, building IKEA desks in the dark because the power was out, closing deals on my cell phone. We hired 3 outside recruiting companies because I didn't have time. Like I was building the whole thing. And
Yeah.
after a month, I fired all 3 of them. They were sending me tons and tons of unqualified candidates. They were probably just posting ads all over the place and sending me resumes. And so I fired all of them and I went back to getting up at 3 a.m. And I sourced. So fast forward a year and a half later, we had about 150 people in the building, and I sourced about 140 of those 150. Helped place them. Got the. By the way, that one sold too for 350 million. I got a cup of coffee out of that deal. But still pretty awesome. And so then with my next startup, I started doing kind of a part-time consulting on the side. where I was like the fractional VP of sales. I was going into small startups and helping them build their playbooks, process, procedures, all of that. And what would happen is I would get to the end and they would go, "Cool, we're ready. Can you help us find salespeople?" And I would. And then one day I had the aha moment. I could probably charge for this. And that's where it all started, man. I stopped doing coaching and consulting and just started doing recruiting. And I figured it out, have a playbook, and we're literally placing 10 to 15 salespeople every month with one full-time employee.
And that's always what's amazed me since the first time we spoke, I think in 2021. Like you were kind of breaking down, the model, some of the systems that you were using, and that it was just you
Yep.
full time. And and I said 10 to 15 people a month, right? You average, you can recruiters know kind of the average fee, probably somewhere in the 15 to 30% range, right? Just depending on clients and volume and everything else. Like you're doing those numbers, like I think people on here can figure that
Yep.
out. Like you're doing pretty well, uh, full time. That goes into, but you're full time, but you also do a lot with partnerships. And I think that's what's really cool about your background just in sales, everything that you did for these companies, now building your own recruiting company. Like, yeah, you're the full time employee, but you're leveraging partnerships left and right. And we'll dive into kind of the split, the partnership board that we've been building out. But what made you, how'd you get going in partnerships in recruiting? Like, how'd that get started?
Yeah, yeah. I would say, first off, partnerships are like, that's my business, Clark. That literally is my business. Every day
Yep.
I'm asked, how many outbound phone calls do you make? How many outbound emails do you make? And I'm afraid to tell people because I don't want them to think it's easy, but I
Think it's
don't.
easy. Yeah.
I can't remember the last time I made a cold call, maybe 4 years ago. Probably sent 1,000 cold emails in the last 5 years. Like that's it. Um, Partnerships are everything. So what I did basically, Clark, is about 4 years ago, I stopped all of my outbound to potential clients, and I just started to change that outbound campaign to go after potential partners. And so, what a potential partner would be is somebody who works with my ICP. So, kind of give everybody an idea of what I do. My niche, who I work with, are SaaS startups who are usually founder led organizations, who are between, I would say, typically 2.5 million to 10 million annual reoccurring revenue. That's kind of my niche. That's the space. That's the sandbox I've played in for years, and I know how
Yeah.
to speak with them. I know how to work with them. Also, I'm super impatient. And if I'm working with a founder, we can move to like, we can get the offer letter signed while I'm on the phone versus having to go to legal and all of the other departments. Also, most of them don't have recruiting departments, so I'm not competing with their internal team. I'm actually trying to help them. Some people on here understand
Yeah.
exactly what that means. But going to
Absolutely.
partnerships, I decided to start looking for companies who work with my ICP. So the first thing I did is I looked for companies that do coaching. Maybe they coach the sales team, maybe they coach the founders, and companies that do onboarding, all specifically for salespeople. And it's easy to have those conversations. If I reach out and say, "Hey, I see that you guys do this, I do this. Would you like to have a conversation about a potential partnership?" You know what they're going to say? Yes, let's do it.
Yes.
Because why wouldn't they?
Yes.
Um, and so I started doing that and I started being very selective. My first partnership, my big one that I built 3.5 years ago, I'm on their website as their head of recruiting. I have their own email address and Slack and all of that as their head of recruiting. And they basically they do onboarding services, they do coaching and training services, and they know all of my fees. So while they're pitching everything, if they see an opportunity, they literally pitch and close my services before I've even talked to them. And then they also take care of the agreements and collecting the money. Now, obviously, they get a
Yeah.
higher percentage than 10%, which is what most get. Um,
Eh,
so that's
yeah.
that's one. My biggest partnership, I landed about a year and a half ago. So I was working with this gentleman who was a partner. He was like a fractional COO, and he would go into companies and help them build the things out. He still has that company, but he referred a lot of his clients to me back and forth. I referred people to him, And then he became the COO of the largest SaaS founder training company in the world. And he reached out to me right after he started and said, "We have a super hard role to fill. It's a director of sales. This is the pickiest company I've ever worked for in my life." And 2 weeks later, they made an offer. And ever since then, I've just really worked closely with them. And now I am their preferred go to. I'm actually their exclusive partner for sales recruiting. There's about 2,000 clients that they have. And whenever, literally anytime they're looking for somebody to hire salespeople, they shoot them to me. So, Clark, I'd say that's one side of partnerships. Um, the other
Yeah.
side is just as important. I mentioned I'm a one person full time company. So it's me and then my wife, Angie. She is the chief of staff, but she also has her side hustle and she has a full time job. So she spends like an hour, 2 hours a day. She's doing all the things that would slow me down: the books, the taxes, sending invoices. I like to do the fun, sexy stuff and not the boring stuff. And she loves all of that stuff. Um, but you're wondering, how do I place 10 to 15 people in sleep? And so the way I've
Well, I know you don't sleep, so I'm not
Well, I
worried
do get
about
up at
that.
4 a.m. now instead of 3. Um, but I would say the biggest thing that I've figured out is partnering with other recruiting firms who are really good at filling roles I might not be really good at, or who enjoy filling roles that I might not enjoy filling. Even though I work
Yeah.
specifically with SaaS startups, that doesn't mean it's all of my clients, because my clients are referrals. And so
Yeah.
I realized, I even if I were able to have 12 candidate meetings every single day for the rest of my life, I still couldn't place 15 people a month because there's too many moving parts. So
Yeah.
what I've done is I've built relationships with 7 really, really good recruiting firms who do things that I normally don't, and then 2 that also um, are great in the sales. So if I'm overloaded, and so what I'll basically do is I'll just work split partnerships. Of the one,
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, of the 19 recs I'm working right now, um, 10 of them are split partnerships. So I literally have 10 people who are working on those, and I'm just spinning the plates. I'm the project manager, which is what I enjoy. So that's a long way of rambling about partnerships, but I got to tell you, they're the way to go. And you guys have just built something we've been talking about for over a year. You just built the Rex split board. And what I
Yeah.
think is unique about your business, I've been part of many of those, and I've canceled my membership with everyone. What's unique about yours is 2 things that I think really makes me excited to be working with you guys on this project. Is one, you're vetting everybody. You're only letting people in that know how to do their shit. Like, they know their stuff and they're going to do things the right way.
Yeah.
I think that's really
Yep.
important. Even as important is they're all exclusive. So most rec boards, what happens is I'm working to help somebody fill a role, and so are 10 other recruiting companies. And it
Yeah.
causes all kinds of pain. Everybody listening to this who's been a recruiter understands that pain. So that's
Yes.
what I love about it.
It it's I love that you bring that up. There is just about 10 minutes of gold there that we have to dig through now. But it's because the partnerships, and for anyone that doesn't know, we've had the digital recruiter program, and Travis has come in and spoken to the recruiters and owners in there, and they all love the feedback I get on the most watched video, I think, is your partnership video that recording that call that we ran. And so, because you just have it dialed in, and so, yeah, and talking to you for the last couple of years, like, it always made sense. And I was like, okay, I see, I had to kind of learn the market and understand the split rec, board market and the different sites that are out there. But that exclusive word, like, you and I see, we're on the same page, like qualifying hard on the front end, clients,
Yeah,
recruiters, candidates. If you can do that and not chase the quick buck and not chase the money, of just like, but just focus on the vetting and the quality. The rest will
yeah.
come, right? That's fine, but it's also, as you said, it's more fun.
It,
Like, and I'm with. I love project managing stuff in recruiting. Like, I absolutely love it. Seeing the pieces and bringing people together. I think we're kindred spirits in
yeah,
that sense. Uh, And that is what's fun about this, right? In the beta testing mode that we're in right now, I mean, I looked at the board, we got 10 great roles that there's a recruiter assigned to each one. There's no other competition. So the recruiter feels great
Yeah.
about it. But at the same time, like they're gonna have to submit their numbers on what they did on that role each week, like each Friday. And I don't know if anyone else is doing that, but like that's what we're gonna do. And it's not gonna take you more than 3 minutes, but at least there's some transparency, right? There's some accountability, and we'll automate that. And then on the client side, I think this is what's interesting is like we'll push back if a rec isn't qualified or if you're not getting feedback, right? There's just kind of that standard. And I think all the owners in there, yourself included, I mean, you just operate this way naturally, but like no one wants to be the weakest link. And I think that's what's fun. Like we're doing that in a fun way, but where we all work really hard. Like we're trying to make things happen. We're trying to make, the right way, but we're not afraid of clients and companies, right? And I think that's the key is you have to it takes some strategy and some work to figure out what you want to say and how to say it, and it takes reps because it does not go perfect. As you said, there are so many moving parts, right? But we're all kind of in agreement, like let's control what we can
Yeah.
control and let's know what we can't. And instead of being like, well, I'm going to try to do everything, or I'm going to be afraid of what I miss out on, it's like what you said, your niche, your sandbox that you do really well, which is why these partners are happy to refer you and vice
Yep.
versa, right? And there's something so powerful about having that clarity to the market, and it's kind of required to have strong
Yeah.
partnerships, right? Like you have to know who you are and who you want to be and the problems you solve. I think to be a good partner to anyone
I
else.
I agree. I agree. And there's a few things you said that
Yeah.
I'll touch on. One thing is you talked about chasing, and I use the term "don't chase, replace." And what I mean by that is one of the trainings
Yeah.
that I've done with you that you guys have recorded was about bringing on the perfect client and who you should. So the red
Yes.
light, yellow light, green lights, and I'm
Yep.
really picky and very, very selective about the clients I bring on. And the short version is if I wouldn't feel comfortable with any of my children working there, they're not a client. If I
Yep.
would feel comfortable with my children working there, but then they become abusive or things change, they're no longer a client. And I know a lot of people on here
Yeah.
like, but I need clients. You don't, because if you bring on a client that you shouldn't bring on, you're just going to spend a lot of time and a lot of money and not get paid for it and be frustrated. And so,
That's
yeah, you
like
need to
yeah.
be very selective about the clients you bring on. And you need to be able to coach them. If they're not coachable, that's another thing. Um,
Yeah.
the other thing that I would tell you about having a specific niche, you mentioned that. My niche, like I said, is I told you who the niche is, but here's the advantage to having a specific niche. A lot of recruiters, I ask them what their niche is, and they're like, "We do recruiting." I'm like, "Cool, for who? Whoever we can." Great, great. That's awesome. But let me tell you what's awesome for me doing the same thing with the same audience. Last Thursday, I placed a role for a director of sales, and I had four candidates in the pipeline that didn't make it to interview, but I had screened them. They were rock star. I got everything ready, but I just didn't have time to present them because I got someone else placed. On Monday and on Tuesday, I brought on two new clients looking for director of sales in the same. They're literally identical job descriptions. Like all three of them are the same job, basically working for different companies. And so now I have one of those companies is interviewing two of those candidates, and another one's interviewing two, and I haven't started the search yet. So that's the advantage of
So
working that niche.
it it's amazing. I mean, that is like how you draw it up. If you go any of the big firms, it's how they tell you how to recruit, right? Repeatable skill sets, have your network. And that was something we were going to touch on is just like how you're able to like fit all of this stuff in and still have results. But I think you kind of just answered it. Like that's it. It's like have your niche, repeatable skill sets you can kind of mix and match, So, and how does that affect your kind of client and candidate relationships when you have that, right? Because a lot of recruiters like, oh, I'll keep you in mind if anything comes up, or they'll tell their clients like, yeah, we'll have someone in a week. What happens? Like, what is that? Like, how do your clients and candidates react when they're like, wow, you have something for me in an hour, right? Or you have something
Yeah.
new for me in another day.
I
Like, talk about that. Like, what's that customer service kind of like feedback like
Well,
that you
and
get?
I'm transparent. I tell all clients and all candidates my numbers, and I tell them how I work. I'm very, very transparent. So with my clients, I tell them I'm a trusted advisor, but it's a two-way street. Like, I can help you. I've placed over 500 people as a VP of sales. I've placed thousands of people owning my recruiting industry. I know what I'm doing, but you have to be coachable. You have to work with me. Like, I have a process. Let me share it with
Yeah.
you. You don't need a 3 week interview process. You don't need 13 steps. Once we get that broke down, then I tell them two numbers that are important. One is 3.1. What that means is I'm averaging 3.1 candidate submissions per hire. That means my clients don't have to do all the hard work. I'm doing the heavy lifting. I'm talking to 6 or 7 people before they see one. Um,
Yeah.
if it's new, most likely I'm going to give them somebody I've already talked to. So that's one advantage. The other number is 19, and what 19 is we're averaging 19 days from the time they sign an agreement to the time an offer letter is signed, where industry standard is about 39, I think. And this is even for
Okay.
VP of sales
Yeah.
roles. And so the way it works is I get a candidate on the phone, Clark. Sorry, I get passionate about this stuff, man. We can talk for hours.
I love it. I
I
love
get a
it.
candidate on the phone, and it's the same thing. Hey, Clark, thanks for taking the time, chit chat, warm up, whatever we talk about. Before we get started, I know we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z role, but I want to let you know I'm typically juggling 10 to 15 clients at a time. I'd love to talk to you about this role because on paper you look like a great fit. But if it doesn't seem like a fit, let's see if I have something else. And you see the candidates, they're like this. Finally,
Yeah.
because what they're used to is you got to interview. Let's get you an interview. It's perfect. It's perfect. I know you don't know the commission or any of that kind of stuff, but you got to go. And I don't work that way. Like, it's a puzzle, man. It's really a puzzle. And then I also tell them
Yeah.
every one of my candidates, we fill out a candidate profile. I'm giving them homework, but I'm having them fill out a specific candidate profile. As you know, it has an 87% acceptance rate. That means 87% of
Yeah.
the candidates I send to a client get an interview. That can't guarantee they're going to bomb the interview, but they're going to get one. And I'm only sending the right people. But so how they react is I tell them, you're a great fit for this role. I'm going to get you an interview. Once you get that over, it's exclusive, means you'll be one of two, three, four, five total people. But I'm going to keep my eyes open just in case something else comes up if this one doesn't work out. And so I don't like sending multiple candidates to multiple clients for a lot of reasons. I know a lot of people on here do, but again, my largest partnership is where most of these people come from, and these clients talk to each other. And I really don't want three of those clients say, "Oh, we all interviewed the same person." That would be a really bad situation. But I
Yeah.
can tell a candidate, "Hey, yesterday I just brought on a new thing, and since those people said no or because of this, I have something for you." And there, I've literally, it's a story that baffles me to this day. But I had a VP of sales, like, great guy. I had placed so many people with him over the years, and he reached out and he said, "Hey, Travis, we need to talk." So I'm thinking, cool, Morex. And he said,
Yeah.
"We just got acquired. My position's eliminated. Can you help me?" And I didn't need to spend a lot of time talking to him. I know the guy. Like, I know all the people I placed with him
Right.
who love him. I didn't have a thing, and I told him I don't have a thing, but maybe I will. Literally an hour later, one of my clients called up and said, "Hey, we have a problem. Our VP of sales just resigned. She's opening up her own SaaS company, and like, literally, we're going to the investment board, like our investors, to get more money in 2 months. I need your help." And I pulled up the profile on LinkedIn, and I'm like, this is the person. She literally said, "Don't get me a resume. Don't fill that thing out. Get me on the phone with him today." And
Yeah.
3 days later, he went through one interview that day, two the next day, two more days. He was on site and he accepted an offer, literally like that. And so sometimes it's just about timing
That's
and being lucky. And also it's about building those relationships.
But you create your own
Yep.
luck, and that's where for everyone listening that might be like, "How do I get there and get to Travis's level?" I mean, it's all the work that you've done on the front end. And we talk about, I mean, we were joking, wake up at 3, now you wake up at 4, but like you put in the work every single day, right, for years. And like that's think sometimes, I call the 2020 the era, the boom of the COVID recruiters, right? Where it's like, oh, I get to work remote and make some placements and some calls and everything's $30,000 fees. It's like that's not reality, and a lot of people are learning that in
Oh yeah,
2023 that that's not how real recruiting is. And so often I tell people you have to do the work, right? Like I have I think people come to me at times like thinking I have the magic fix to everything. I'm like, there is no magic. If you're not working hard, there's nothing I can do to fix like maybe like what's ailing you or like you have to. We can work on like what works, but you got to go do
yep,
it. And like that's the key. Like you put in the work, but it was all like an intentional strategy, right? With the niche, you're on the phone with your market multiple times a day. You have systems and a form, a process that you've been able to take a step back. And I know you've done this at certain times in your business to kind of take a step back, for a month or two and be like, okay, what's working? How do I fix the system? And have like 2.0 and 3.0 and
oh yeah,
4.0, because if you get that involved, it's just going to make your day to day quicker and faster. And like these stories happen for a reason. They don't like the quick wins are that's a long time to get a quick win. Like like that's what's really cool. I hope that's the takeaway people have is like if you put in the work with the right strategy, like it will pay off. And that's how these moments
absolutely. That
happen. Right? It's like we got an offer in 3 days or
that quick
whatever.
win
Mhm.
was a 2.5 year quick win. I mean, I literally worked with those
Yes.
people for 2.5 years before that quick win happened.
Yeah. Yeah, with that, yeah, with both
Hmm.
sides, right? So like just being in the game, being patient, like doing the right things every day, and you got to do things to make sure the bills are paid, right? And you talk about that in your book, like when COVID hit and the pandemic and all that. Like, what can I do? Well, you just like you got on the phones, you did what you do, you talked to people, you figured out a way that you can create an income and kind of built this business, right? Like that was a pretty cool. That's like I love that story that you have, and like you just like, how do I turn this into a win? Like, what do I need to do? And how do I offer value? I think that's what you do a ton of. Like you've talked to me and people in my program, like you just because you're willing to. I don't know how you have time for it, but you do. But I think there's been some payoff there. I'd love to kind of get your perspective on that. Kind of like when the chips are down, like how have you approached that, right? And kind of you wrote about that in the book a
Yeah.
little bit. What's your recommendation for people that might be kind of hitting a wall right now, kind of like how to climb out of it in recruiting?
First thing, not just in recruiting, in any business, is you should have a goal and a model, and you should be doing something for a reason that you're passionate about. I think first off, and
Yeah.
second off, you need to follow that. Like you shouldn't be working because I have to work harder this month because I didn't make enough placements last month. And you shouldn't change the way that you treat or react to people because you're making more or less money. It should just be what you do. I've always been that person
Yes.
that gives more than I take, but it always comes back around, right? That's we're on this podcast today, and so it always
Yeah.
comes back around. But I think there there's a lot to it. The biggest thing is the way I look at it is when I decided to own my own business and I decided to make it a recruiting. Well, you'll read in the book. You guys should read it. Um, how it changed a lot, but one of the things I thought about is wouldn't it be cool if I could talk to people that I want to talk to on a daily basis? And wouldn't it be cool if I could help a lot of people? And so that's how I look at it. I don't look at it how much am I making. Now my wife can tell you how much we have in our bank account, and she can tell you
Yeah.
how many invoices we have sitting out there right now. And I suppose if I wanted to, I could tell you that, but I just know it happens. Like it's coming through. I know we're going to hit in the seven figures again this year. I know that, but I'm not focused on that because if I focus on that, just like telling salespeople, if you're thinking about a sale, you won't get one. And so you need to
Exactly.
focus on just doing the right thing every day. And sometimes you're chipping away at the rock and nothing happens. And then sometimes the rock breaks, right? But
Yeah.
it's
It's
not the first hit. It's not the 101st hit. It's just all of them that does it.
it's just yeah, it's just who you are in business, right? It's just being that way, as you said. There's so many ups and downs, and it could be an emotional roller coaster if you let it, in terms of recruiting and just business in general and sales. So it's like, what are the things you're bringing to the table every day? Like I always tell people, my 3 C's are: I got to connect with people every day, I got to call people every day, and I got to be posting content every day. If I do those three things, I know I'm going to move in the right direction. whether someone signs up or doesn't sign up. Like if I just keep doing those things, like that's just like my true
Yep.
north, and like good things happen. He said that's how this podcast got started, right? This is an excuse for me to check off call every single day that I record one of these, and it's like that's what drives them. You got to know what's going to move the needle for you and your
Yep.
business, and just stay with it. And people, yeah, people
They
feed
do.
off of
And I would
that.
say, like,
Yeah,
you kind of walk through your key to success, the three C's. I look at the key to success in recruiting. There's a ton of them, but I would say there's probably 4 to 5 things that I know that I have to do every day. First and foremost, above anything else, is process. Like, process is king. You have to have a process. You have to follow the process, and you have to stick with it. Even if you have a bad week or two, you shouldn't change it. Now, you can tweak it and make it better along the way, but
yes,
everything is process. Number two, communication. Um, it's super, super important to have good communication with your clients, with your candidates, with your partners. There's a lot of moving plates here. You need to communicate properly, and also you need to train everybody you work with how to communicate properly. Um, the next one would be speed. You have to. This market is crazy. You have to move super, super, super fast without compromising process. And
yeah,
you also need to know how to multitask with a purpose, which we can kind of talk about. And
yeah. What do you mean by that?
the one
Yeah,
other thing on top of this
yeah,
is knowing how and when to set boundaries. Um, and so I think I'll speak to both of those. The multitasking with a purpose. What I mean by that is some people want to make sure they're always doing something and they're always busy. They feel like if I'm busy, my business is succeeding. That's not really true. You need to be doing
yeah.
the work that is most important, but you also need to not burn yourself out. When I had 2 full-time jobs, one was building my business and one was a VP of sales. I had 2 really full-time jobs. Like, I didn't sleep. I get up at 4 a.m. every day, but that's not because of work.
Mm.
We literally haven't used an alarm clock in 15 years. We get up at 4 a.m. every day. It's just what we do. But we also are not night owls. I did that in my earlier years. I got that out of the way. Um, but this is going to shock the shit out of people on this call. I don't take my first call until 9 a.m. and I don't take my any calls after 2 p.m. Like, if you look at my Calendly, you cannot book before 9 a.m. and you cannot book after 2 p.m. And when my phone rings, as everybody on this call, phone tonight between 6 and 9, it's going to ring at least 3 times. That's going to be candidates and clients. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to respond tomorrow morning. I'm setting boundaries.
Yeah,
After I shut down shop at 4, I've shut down shop. I don't care if it's an emergency or a fire. I'm married, I have a life to live, and I want to enjoy my life. So I figured out a
yeah,
way to double my business and work less hours. And part of that is setting boundaries when you schedule meetings. The other one, game changer pro tip, blocking your time. So here's what a day in the
yeah,
life used to look like. You will get this, Clark. So a day in the life used to look like 7 a.m. I'm on my first call with a candidate who, by the way, isn't even close to being qualified, but they reached out to me on LinkedIn. They just got laid off and they really need help. So I'll take every call. Why not? This is what it used to look like, by the
yep,
way. Um, that meeting runs late. Now it's 7:31, and I'm late 1 minute for a potential client. I get on the phone with the potential client. We run over 5 minutes, and I jump to a partnership. And then I'm talking to an SDR. Then I'm talking to a VP of sales. It's a freaking mess. And then at 6 at night, I'm trying to remember what happened and I'm trying to put everything, all the pieces together. So, a couple things that I do, every meeting is on the hour. So, I have 30-minute meetings with candidates, I have 45-minute meetings with partners or clients. They all start on the hour, nothing starts on the half hour. That's one thing. The next thing is I block my time. So, on Mondays are mostly partnership meetings and client meetings. If I have openings, I'll throw a candidate meeting in there, but otherwise, I'm doing that all day because I'm having the same two conversations all day. Tuesday and Thursday are
Yeah.
just candidate meetings unless I need to put something in. And I try to block the candidate meetings by specific type of companies. So, as an example, um, tomorrow I am going to be talking to, well, yeah, anyway, I block it out. So I'm talking to one day mostly my director and VP roles, and the next day if I have SDR roles or account exec roles, I'm talking to them because it's the same conversation. You're talking to the same person. Um, I'm also trying to
Yeah.
only bring on roles that are cool where I can talk to cool people. I don't like talking to boring people. Man, life's too short. Um, so have fun with it. But I think block your time, protect your time, own the day. Don't let the day
Yeah.
own you. Own your company. Don't let the company own you. This is a shocker. When this, when I go on vacation, like I'm not taking calls. And we're going to Kauai for 10 days. And you would think my businesses would be shut down for 10 days, but actually my business will do better because I shut down for 10 days. Now, I'm
It's crazy how that
still checking
works.
emails,
Yeah.
things like that, but I have
Yeah.
partners that can handle the things, so it just keeps
Yeah.
going.
It's it's so smart, and I love it. It's such a cool story for people to hear and just know that it is possible. And I'm with you. I block out my calls are 11 to 4 Tuesdays through Thursdays. That's when I do calls. Like Monday and Friday is team calls, working on the business, like all that stuff. And if I have to throw in something, sure. The only other one I have on Mondays is a one of the agencies that we partner with that I have the weekly meeting with them. They're the one exception, right? Everyone else fits into the Tuesday through Thursday bucket, and it's been so
It,
nice. It's been really nice to have, and now that I got almost like a 3 month old, I get to spend the morning with him, and then handle that, and then get meet with my team, and then go into calls, and having that Monday to
isn't
Friday
that nice?
buffer. It's really nice, right? It's just really nice because we got three different things we're managing. We got the split rec board, our own agency, but then a digital recruiter like the consulting and that program and that master agency owner mastermind. So it's just you're right. Like I feel more productive, and I am more productive now. The business does better now when I have that schedule versus when I was just Monday through Friday. Everything was
Really?
open. As you mentioned, context switching is so important,
Absolutely.
right? You're talking to an owner and then a recruiter and then an ATS company and all that. I'm like, I can't, as you said, your head's
Yeah.
spinning, right? Because all that context switching takes up so much energy. So that's where like having that plan, like what do you do well, sticking with the process, like having those boundaries, right? I think recruiters is just, I hear so often there's no, well, why do I need that? Or why don't I'll just kind of work with anything. It's like, well, owners and decision makers that are willing to kind of hand over that check, like they don't want to work with people
Mhm.
that are kind of just do whatever and like you're not trustworthy. Like it doesn't build that sense of trust and that like loyalty that these recruiters are asking that they're saying they
Yeah.
want, right? With I want perfect clients, a recs that are closed. I'm like, well, what are you doing to get those
Yeah.
recs? Right. And it's not just finding a candidate, it's so many other pieces of the puzzle, right? That you have to look at like yourself, like what am I doing? Am I doing what I need to do to earn that type of clients and earn those types of recs? And a lot of time, maybe they just got lucky with one client that was great, but they don't actually know how to build the system or understand what worked from that to kind of to build off
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I would say, two other pieces of advice in this conversation we're having is if you have a system that's working really, really well, but then suddenly you have a bad week or a bad month, don't change your system. Don't think you need to start working 8 hours a week again. Like, do what's working. It'll catch up if you're doing the right thing.
yeah,
Something I didn't follow up on earlier, as I mentioned, I used to talk to anybody, all the candidates. Um,
yeah,
I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn, and I probably get 20 to 25 candidates every day that reach out that say, "Hey, can you help me?" And I used to say yes. Well, during COVID, you'll read in the book, I said yes because I didn't have a job. I needed to do
right,
something. I couldn't just sit here. Um, and so what I do is I look at their profile. I look to see if I think they have something for me. I ask them a few simple questions. What sort of comp are you looking for? That type of thing. Amazingly, some people get angry that I'm asking because they just want to talk. but I let them know like my time's valuable. I only have so much time in the day. I don't have something for you today. Here's my website. Here's the job descriptions. I update it daily. If you notice there's something that comes up that you're qualified for, raise your hand, let me know. And when they raise their hand, then I
That's it.
question them via email to see if it works. If it works, I talk to them. If not, why waste their time by talking to them when I don't have something to help them with?
This is we're at the 40-minute mark. There's a lot of people here that need to book the 40-minute mark and listen to it over and over and over again, because it's the posting on LinkedIn, it's filtering through the inbox. This is the lesson on how to not overpromise to candidates, which is a classic problem, and this is where recruiters typically bog down most of their time, from what I see. And whenever I have to audit a recruiter or an agency's time, this is what I see as the biggest problem: is a bunch of wasted out of the call. I call them nonprofit recruiters, because they're just giving their time away for it's just charity. Because you're talking to a bunch of candidates that don't want to be helped, aren't acting like they're going to be helped, aren't acting like they're employable, or maybe they are, but you don't have anything available. So the ones that are good are feeling like their time is being wasted, but maybe you're trying to hit your phone screen number, so it's like there's just that disconnect there, right? So like filter through the
Filter.
inbox. That's what I'm hearing. Have them check in with you, put the ball in their court, not take the ownership. I'll reach out if I have something. No, 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 no. Have them reach out. That's a way to filter who's actually interested, who's actually
Yeah.
looking, right, and who's serious. It's a great filtering
Don't
system.
don't promise something you can't deliver. If I tell candidates I'll reach out to you when
Yeah,
something opens up, I come on, I literally have over 20,000 connections, and of those 20,000, I've
yeah,
spoke with probably 15,000 of them. I'm not going to remember that. Like I don't remember what I had for breakfast.
yeah. Yeah, it's I don't either. Now that I'm thinking about it, but coffee was involved. That's all I know. It's so like that's it's such a it's just such an important point. But it's so key, especially once you build up the outreach system and the content system on LinkedIn. That's typically the problem I get. That people, well, I have too many people in my inbox. Okay, like like it's like I didn't know that was going to be a problem, but we could let's work through it. And a lot of the time I just have to train them, like all you have to do is like, hey, what are you looking for, what's the comp? Nothing right now, or actually this makes a ton of sense for us to talk about, like what's your number, like let's go on the calendar, or it doesn't. But as you said, here's our site, we update the jobs, like keep us posted, like let me know. Always happy to hop in. But then even then you have the form they have to fill out before a
Mm-hmm.
call, right? And so like that extra step, and I know we've incorporated that. I mean, I know Lauren had that, and we've done stuff, and we've working with you. That's been great to have those forms, because it just allows for so much speed, and everyone's just happier
Yeah.
in a sense. But I think there is this like I have to just be on the phones, as you said. Productivity or activity isn't necessarily productivity, and those are some like really quick
Yeah.
fixes to
And
make. Yeah,
you're talking about posting on LinkedIn, and is it cool if I jump in and touch on that?
yeah. Oh, that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
So I'm a big a believer and fan of A/B testing, like everything. I mean, I test like my wife calls it anal, but I can tell you everything about everything that's happening in my business, down to like a small percentage, because it's important for me to know that. And
Yeah.
I have this in my book. It's called Ocean to Pond. I don't know if you got there yet. But basically, so several years ago, I had 2,000 LinkedIn connections. And then I'm like, I got to get my connections up. So I got up to about 8,000. And then I started posting all kinds of cool, fun, silly stuff. And I was posting things for candidates. I wanted candidates to see this. And then my inbox was blowing up from candidates that wanted to talk to me about jobs. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden I'm like, well, I'm talking to them. I'm telling them they should talk to me. And so I did a couple things. And
Right.
one thing I did is I cleaned out three-quarters of my inbox of on LinkedIn. So I got down to about 1,500 people, because most of the people I had in there were not people that I can help or who can help me. They were not SaaS founders. They
Right.
were not SaaS salespeople. A used car salesperson from Cedar
Yeah.
Rapids, Iowa, we can't, there's nothing we can do to each other than screw up each other's algorithm by looking at something that we're posting. So
Yeah.
what I did is I got
Yeah.
rid of the ocean, and I built a really small pond, and I stocked that with over 20,000 of the people that of the fish that I want to go fishing for in a very, very, very small pond. So that's one thing.
Yep.
Then I changed my messaging. My messaging isn't designed for candidates anymore. Candidates love my content, but that's not who I'm building it for. I'm building the content for my clients. I want my clients to
That's what you
see
got.
the content. Um, I don't recommend this. Is probably going to go. I don't. This you probably have to bleep this part out. I don't recommend posting jobs on LinkedIn and saying we have this new opening. Reach out to me, because who's going to reach out to you? Like, who are the people? Do you want somebody who had, not that there's anything wrong with somebody who's been out of work for 6 months, I'm not saying that, but do you want somebody who's desperate, who has applied for 30 jobs and can't get one? Or do you want to talk to somebody who's passive, who's crushing it at their company right now, but there might be something going on in that company where you can pull them away? And so I'm
Right.
posting content specific for clients. Candidates still reach out all the time. But the cool thing is, you know this, I do a post every day, sometimes two. Um, I don't care what time of the day. I haven't figured LinkedIn's algorithm out. I've had posts where I've got 500,000 views, and I've gotten posts where I've had, 50 views. The big thing that I'm finding out is I every week I talk to a candidate, and I'm screening them, and I found them, and they're like, dude, I love your content, man. I've been following you for years. And so that's why I'm talking to you and not other recruiters who reach out to me, because I know who you are. And
Yep.
I get at least two clients a month that reach out to me, and they're like, hey, Travis, I've been following you for a while. I've never commented on any of your posts. Something resonated with me yesterday. Can we have a conversation? And I'm not connected with them. I've never talked to them, but they've seen something. And it's the same thing on TV advertising, right? If you have a Coca-Cola commercial one time, people won't remember it. But if you keep seeing it over and over and over, when you're thirsty, you know what to get. I don't drink Coca-Cola. That was just an
Yeah.
example. Um,
Yeah. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Jingle, like it
whatever it is.
all. It's such an important point, right? Like there's that consistency. That's what I always tell people. Content should be a sales touch point. It's not just like hey, here's our cool logo and design. Like it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. Like it's what's your take on recruiting? How, because you're trying to stand apart from the tens of thousands of agencies that are now all pitching their 30 MPCs, most placeable candidate, or they've all learned about automation. And so now they're outsourced the automation to a company that has no idea about recruiting and hitting with the same script and the same terrible
Yeah.
messaging and all that. And that's you. We could talk, we could fix that, reach out to me. But like that's it's crazy, and the opportunity, I think maybe it's just fear sometimes or not knowing what to say, but like when I read your posts and I tell people like, look at Travis's content, because it's just, you're just sharing what's going on in the world, and in your, excuse me, in
Yeah.
your
I'm just
world.
telling the story.
You're just sharing the stories, and that's interesting enough.
Yeah, the pitch isn't, "Hey, I'm the best recruiting company out here. You need to talk to me because of this." But it is, but it's
Yeah.
not saying that. It's a story around a
Right.
thing that happened and how it came together, versus I'm awesome, I'm great, talk to me. Which I do that like
Yeah.
about once
We'll save you time and money. Yeah. We care more than other people. Like all that's like, okay. Yep. Yep. You and every other
a month.
agency.
Be aware
So
of vanity metrics. I fell into that. Just
yeah.
beware. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter if you have 500,000 views or 5 views. And it doesn't matter if there's only 100 views and nobody comments and nobody likes. It still could be that one person that you want to see that content, who is your ICP, and that could
Yep.
do it. I'll give a really solid example. 2 3 months ago, I was talking to a potential client, and it was a referral. And at the end of the call, one of the co-founders said, "Hey, Travis, can you do me a favor? Can you let us know if we're going to be one of your stories on LinkedIn before you make us one of your stories?" And I said, what do you mean?" He said, "Oh, we crack up over your content all the time, man. We've been following you for a bit, but sometimes you throw these
Yeah.
guys under the bus, man. Don't let that be us." And it was like an aha moment that, like, they're paying attention, and I had never met them before.
And it's not only paying attention, but imagine how much better of a client they're going to be going into the
Hmm.
engagement. Right? Like, they don't want to be. It's like, all right, well then, take the coaching, follow the process, and we won't have that problem. Right. And when they're coming to you, they're looking at you as the authority, and you have the positioning and the frame and all those things that 99% of agencies don't have before a call, that first call. And you're doing that, you're just posting into the ether, right? You have the right connections, the content that is relevant to those connections. So they're coming to you. So you're skipping those like 10, like you don't have to do those 10 calls to one on one and beg one person. It's one post going out to thousands of people that are like, that are similar in the same space. Like
Yeah.
that's the game changer. That's quote unquote the cheat code that I try to preach over and over and over to people. And I think you're living it, and you're the example of what happens if you have a dialed in process, plus you know how to market yourself as an agency. Like the world is your
Right.
oyster.
And I mean, there's more to it. It seems like, a lot of people like, man, it seems easy. It's not. Part of the thing that I've been successful in doing is asking some of my top partnerships if I can help them by being involved in um, their webinars, their podcasts, things like that. And so I
Yeah.
get an opportunity to be in the training library of a lot of my top partners by webcasts that I'm doing, and it helps them and it helps their clients, but also it's my business card. It's like the book you're holding there. There's my business card.
Yeah. There it is.
It's right side up this time.
The Oh man. Oh, it's right side up this time. Did I have it backwards last
That's
time?
okay.
Yeah. Let's make sure I have it right. Uh how we got to cover this before we wind down. How do you fire a client,
Yeah.
or when and
When and
how?
how. So I think, there's when the warning signs are there. And I'll give you some good warning signs. We've all been there. Everything's going smooth, and then suddenly they ghost you. They have four candidates in front of you, and you don't hear from them in 4 or 5 days, or they become abusive, or they'll say, I don't like any of these candidates, but they won't tell you why. Whatever the thing is, I try to coach them. I do my best to coach them, and I also understand people have bad days. Maybe they stubbed their toe, spilled coffee on themselves, got in a fight this morning, whatever. So I know people are going through things, but if it's consistent, then I will just tell them, I don't know that this relationship's working out. I want to help you, but you know, I maybe am not patient enough to work with you. I need to go a little bit faster. So I just want to know if we should make some changes, or if you'd like me to let you out of the exclusive agreement. Maybe I can suggest someone else who maybe can work with you better. And then
Yeah.
they argue with me and they don't want me to fire them. And then they start changing their ways. But if they won't change their ways, then there's like I get to do this every day. I wake up and I get to do this. I don't have to do this, but when you work with those shitty clients, you
Yeah.
have to do it, and they're not paying you ahead of
Yeah.
time. So
Right.
like you're not getting paid to be abused, which is a terrible thing. So you don't want to do that. Does that help?
It it's great. It's a terrific, understanding of the different mindset that you have, or that that you allow, right? You're allowing that behavior, and clients will give you every reason. Though there'll be different clients that are just gonna one reason after another, and that's the hard part, is like figuring out how to, as you said, the communication and how to phrase that. And I think the way you approach it, you always put the ball back in their court. That's what I'm always telling
Hmm.
recruiters. Like, you're just a matchmaker. You're not the company that needs the person. You're not the candidate that's going to be working there day to day. Like, you remove the emotion from
Also,
you and be like, hey, it's what's that? Yeah, it's like, hey, you're like this the candidate. You're like looking bad in front of candidates, right? So I can't have that, because I'm talking to them and hyping you up the way we talked about it, and you're not coming through. That makes me look bad. It makes you look bad. This is going to be like, no one's going to accept an offer, which means I'm not going to get paid, right, on the other end. And like, so I can't be associated with that. It's not worth my time. As I always say, like, I'm not going to work for
yeah,
free. So like, you just have to have that. I think that framework you gave is going to be super helpful for people listening that maybe aren't sure how to approach it, or maybe haven't approached it the way they wanted to before. That's the way to do it, right? You just have to bring it up, and recruiting is just a bunch of tough conversations to get to like the really fun
yes.
stuff. and then more tough conversations happen, and then it gets fun again, and all that. It's just it's the whole up and down. And as you said, you get to do this, and if you have that mindset, well, then it makes it worth it.
Yeah.
But there's still tough days and all that
Well, we
stuff.
all have
So,
tough days, right?
um,
It
yeah,
whatever it happens, focus on what you
yeah,
control and push the rest out of the way, right? What you think about, you bring about, and
yeah,
life is typically a self-fulfilling prophecy. You get what you expect, right? So if
absolutely,
we had a hiccup, whatever. It's kind of like driving down the road and you have to take a detour. You'll still get there. Maybe you wanted to go this
yeah,
way, but you got to go this way a little bit. No big deal.
yeah,
One
absolutely.
of the
Yeah, I
things
miss a turn
One
here
of
or
the
there.
things about
Yeah,
speaking with clients, I know you didn't bring this up, but I get this all the time. I'm talking to recruiters, and so are you, and I ask them to give me their pitch. They're like, I can't close clients, and I can't figure out why. And I hear their pitch, and the problem is it's a pitch. Um,
yeah,
my
yeah.
I don't have a pitch. I get them on the phone. We do simple introductions. I give them my breakdown. As you heard, it's one sentence, right? I help growing SaaS organizations hire the top 5% of salespeople fast. Here's a little bit about my background and my history, and letting them know why they would want to talk to me. And then I'm like, tell me about you. Cool. Where do you need help? What do you need help on? And we spend 35 minutes, never like the first 35 minutes, unless they bring it up. I don't tell them my fees. I don't tell them that I can help them yet. I'm listening, I'm taking notes, I'm asking questions. And I almost never even say, okay, would you like to hear how I work? Like, I wait for them. At the very, very end, I'm waiting for them to say how much. And if they don't, then I say, well, it's been awesome talking to you. What would next steps look like? And then they're baffled that I'm not trying to close them, and usually then they'll say, well, how much is it, right? And so I wait till they ask me. I don't like, because I don't want to tell them pricing up front. What if I don't want to work with them? Plus, that's a terrible way to close. Like,
Right.
you just have a
That-
conversation, be the expert, tell them how you can help them. And the other key thing, maybe they don't need you yet. Maybe they think they need you, but they don't. And so
yeah,
a potential client that I talked to last week, they're not ready to hire yet. They shouldn't hire yet. It's a founder-led organization. They need a fractional VP to go in and help them build stuff out. So I said, you don't need me yet, but let me introduce you to somebody that can help you out. And they were baffled, like, what? But you know what? Sometime this year, they'll come back because they will need me then, and they'll
absolutely.
remember that I didn't try to close them when I should have tried to close them.
It's it's so fast. I had a message like that today, actually. Very similar. It's interesting you say that. Is I talked to someone a year ago that I showed him some of the LinkedIn stuff, some automation stuff, content, what you can do there. But I could tell he wanted to try it on his own. I was like, dude, go try it on your own. Come back to me. Let me know how it is. Like wasn't ready to for coaching. Messaged me this morning. Hey, I just billed $107,000 last week. I've had my best week ever. He's like, I just hired 3 people. I want you to train all of them. I'm like, okay, like, we could talk about that. And I was like, but I was just so pumped for
Yeah.
him. Like, how cool is that to have a couple phone calls last year? Show like you point someone in the right direction. You're like, hey, you don't need me yet. And it's like, cause like I could tell like you're the type like you want to figure this out. Like, go for it. Like, go for it. Here you go. And I think he was kind of blown away last year. I kept talking to him, checking in on him, and not but not trying to pitch. And then you get that message, and like sure enough, like there it goes, right? And it's like number one, it's super cool story. He's like trying to figure out how to write me a testimonial
Nice.
and all that. I'm like, great, like I didn't see that coming. Like that's awesome. But like it's fun, as you said. If you kind of have the purpose and the mission, and you just give and give and give, and probably sometimes more than we should, and that's
Okay.
okay. I think also at the same time, I think you probably agree. You and I have probably been given more than we ever thought we would ever get. So it's kind of just like for us, it's kind of paying it,
Yeah.
kind of the paying it back, paying it forward, and it's just I love hearing stories like that. That client will definitely come back to you because there's not enough of that in this world where people, you take yourself seriously and the business seriously, but not too seriously, and have fun, have a process, have boundaries, and you're able to give like that. People don't get that experience often. They're not going to forget you when they
Yeah.
do. And especially if you're posting out on content in LinkedIn and you're putting yourself out there, a lot of those types are a little bit different behind the scenes. So if you can be congruent with how you're posting and how you are behind the scenes, I mean, it's a recipe for success,
Yeah.
and it's a recipe, I would say, for fulfillment too. So, fulfilling life.
Would agree. You also mentioned clients giving you, or they asked how they could give you a referral. If you take a look at my website, you'll notice I have one of my tabs is featured clients. And so these are clients, these aren't all of my clients, but these are clients that I've spoke with, that I've placed people with, that I've said, can I put your logo on my website? And would you be willing to give me a referral if somebody asks? And so the interesting thing is, you would be shocked how many clients I'm talking to, and they're like, "Why are you better? Why should we talk to you?" You know the story. And I literally just pull this. I
All
just
that.
pull this up, and I say, "Do you know any of these people?" And they do, because I'm working in the same circles. Um,
Yeah.
and so that, like, literally right there. And I can't tell you how often somebody will call up and say, "Hey, so and so just reached out to me, and asked if I would recommend you, and I gave you a thumbs up, so they should be reaching out to you soon." Happens all the time just by putting that up on the website.
It's amazing. It's just such a it's a long-term vision, right? I said reverse engineering like the business that you want, how you want to operate, and it makes it so fun. And if people aren't used to it at first, I think that's you said, sometimes you get looks like, what? Like you really operate like this way in like a legitimate way? It's like, yeah, like it's possible, right? And it's nice, and it can become infectious for the right with the right people. And sometimes people that aren't a fit or aren't meant to be, they're gonna do it kind of their own way. Kind of has a way of filtering them out
Yeah.
too, which is really nice. So, um, one or two last things before we wind up. We gotta at least get one crazy recruiting story from you, because you got a million.
Wow. There's so many. Um,
I know.
One that really stands out, Clark. The just it's People say, what's the craziest thing that's ever happened in your business? And I say, it hasn't happened yet, because every time there's the craziest thing, the new thing happens tomorrow. um, so one candidate reached out to me. She said she saw one of my posts. She went to my website. She found out a role that would be perfect for her. She reached out to me. I sent her the Calendly link. She booked a meeting. All good. I called her. She hung up on me. I called her back, and she yelled at me and said, "Stop harassing me." And I said, hold on. Like, literally, here's what just happened. You reached out to me. You booked. She said, "This is a scam," and she hung up on me. So that, to start with, that's crazy. But what's worse is
Yes.
an hour later, she emailed, texted, and left a voicemail, and she was pissed off that I didn't hold our meeting. Like, I think I dodged a bullet. I'm sure my client dodged a bullet, but I don't know what happened there. And it was the same person, the same phone number. So it wasn't somebody different. It was the same voice on the voicemail.
That's I don't know. That's a couple Bloody Marys for brunch mixed with something
Yeah,
else to have that kind of
all
day. I don't know what's going on
you know what
there.
I did?
Yeah,
I Instead of getting frustrated, I'm like, there is a post right there. There's a post.
that's it. Let's turn that some content. Let's generate some revenue from that. But yeah, because that's wow. People are something, man. People are
Yeah, but
something.
who knows?
Um,
She
all
maybe
right.
had a bad day.
It could be. It could be. I said, just waves in the ocean, one after another. You just roll it off. Roll off your shoulder. Use it as some content. It's a good
That might have
funnel.
been
It's a good outlet. I've done that as
that
well.
might have been
Yeah,
on 420. That could be what happened also.
yeah. That's my birthday, so yeah, crazy stuff happens on that day. But well, one last thing. So what? I guess what inspired you to write the book?
Yeah, good question. I've always wanted to write a book, and I started about
Yeah,
5 years ago and just couldn't get the momentum. What inspired me
yeah,
is what happened during COVID. So you've read this, the beginning in there, but in
yeah.
February I had my record month, best month ever. um, in my recruiting business, and also the company that I was a VP of sales with, we had a record month. So, like, things were going really, really well. Things were rocking. I was at the point where I was about to tell those guys, I can't work for you anymore. Like, I'm sorry. I had their team going. I had everything rocking, but I literally was losing. I was making 4 times as much doing this as a side hustle than I was as a VP of sales. And So the way the book came in is things were going great and then they weren't. COVID hit, I had no clients, and I no longer had a VP of sales job because they were not a COVID friendly company. So I went from the best thing ever to being unemployed, not having a job, and not having any clients because the world shut down and everybody shut down. And so it's
Yeah.
kind of about how did I figure my new business model out? How did I recreate it? And how did I turn it into something that it is today, where I'm working less hours, less stress? My blood pressures went down. I had a lot. We could go into that. It happens when you're working all the time. And you get up and work and
Yeah.
work and work, and so the story is about how did I go from Silicon Valley SaaS startups to a seven figure recruiting agency, but it's not like a do this, do this, do this, do this. It's more of storytelling along the way of what happened, with some emotion in there, with some laughs in there also. And also there's a playbook for everybody on here. I literally am giving you the playbook of which client should you bring on, which client should you not bring on, like all of the
Oh, it's so
things.
good.
It's all the
Yeah.
things are in there. But that was my inspiration for the book. Was it's written for two groups. Number one, it's written for SaaS startup founders intentionally, but it's also written for recruiters
Yeah.
because I know so many recruiters out
Yeah.
there are struggling. They're working their asses off and they're not getting the results. When in all reality, I wake up at 4. By the way, you know this. I don't get on the computer. So we have a routine and we follow it. I don't care what's happening. And we get up, we hang out, we have breakfast and coffee, we play cards every day, we work out, we go walk if we can walk, unless there's a blizzard or hail or whatever, which we're in Denver, we get that like every day. Um,
Yeah.
we literally don't turn our computers on until probably 3 hours after we're awake. We're doing the things we need to do to take care of us before we dive into it, so then we can go hard. Um, Another thing
Yeah.
in the book, Clark, is I've I've had to reinvent the business many many times because of the changing environment. And one day we had this aha moment, and I wanted to share this with everybody because I don't think it's really anybody who owns a business. We have this habit of doing everything all the time. And so I was overwhelmed. I was just like, I high blood pressure, all kinds of things, stressed, relationships, all of this stuff. And one day, Angie, my wife, and I sat down and we did this whiteboard exercise that took almost all day. Super simple, very, very simple. And it was let's write down every single thing that I do, everything. And you'd think that's easy. You'd be amazed how many things I did. You guys know. So we wrote down every single thing. And then we wrote next to them a plus. And if it's a plus, that means this is mission critical. If that thing doesn't happen, the business will fail. Um, the next thing we did is we put a question mark. And the question mark is this important for the business or not? And
Yeah.
then the third category is if this doesn't get done right away, is that okay? Right. And so we broke them into those. Then once we broke them into those, I broke into what are the things I'm the best at and the worst at? What are the things that I love doing and the things that I don't love doing? And
Yeah.
this took a lot of iterations. And pretty much soon I broke it down to here's what has to happen to make the business go. Here's what I love doing, and here's what I'm great doing. Here's a whole bunch of shit that we don't need to do at all. Let's get rid of that. We shouldn't be doing it anyway. And here's the things my chief of staff or my partners can take on. So today I do the things that I'm good at and that I enjoy. I still do some things I don't enjoy, right? We all do. But for the most part, my tasks are
Mhm.
designed to be mission critical for the business. If it's not mission critical, if I'm not that good at it, and if I don't like it, I'm not doing it. Somebody else is doing it. Um,
Yeah.
and I recommend if people don't have other people working in their company, go hire an EA. that can do all these things. Like literally, Angie takes
Mhm.
care of my calendar. She takes care of my emails. She takes care of billing. She takes care of taxes. All those things that I really don't want to do. Matter of fact, she posts out all of my link. I gave her my LinkedIn contact. She puts it on Canva and posts it out 3 weeks ahead of time. I'm not. I don't even post on LinkedIn. Although it's important,
That's
I
it.
just write out the content. And what I do is I don't do that daily. I block off twice a week. I block off 2 hours and I just go and I just do it. And then I give it to her and I'm done. So,
You're the a living digital recruiter. That's for sure. Emphasize both
yes,
aspects. So it's really cool. I love that you saw the finish line with the book and got it done and got it published. That's
I'm
so
excited
cool.
about
And
it.
on top of everything else that you're doing, yeah, you should be. You should be proud, and it's cool. And Travis isn't kidding. There is a playbook that if you follow to a T as a recruiter, you will get better. You will have a better process. You will get better clients. You will train better clients. I highly recommend it. It's well worth it. It's just there's not much out there that reads this way in the recruiting industry, right? It took me months to figure out what actually was going on in recruiting, and Travis has laid it all out. And if the process is there, and it's just putting in the work, and uh, so I love it. So Travis, I think the best way to find you probably LinkedIn and now Amazon, right? You of all
Yeah,
people, the title of the book, that's one business card. I think LinkedIn's the other,
it
right?
is. It's such a great business card that it's been out since the first, and I already gained somewhere
Yeah.
between $30,000 to $40,000 client because of the book. Literally, they had it narrowed down to me and one other person, and I just shot them the link so they could buy the Kindle version. It's only a 3 hour read, guys. It's not a long read. Um, the next
Yeah.
day, he said, "Send me the contract." So, like, it's already paid for itself.
I love it. I love it. Well, we'll have the link to the book in the episode section and wherever we post this everywhere. So, make sure to, subscribe, leave a review, go buy Travis's book, all that good stuff. If you want to talk to Travis, reach out to him directly on LinkedIn. Travis, thanks for
Yeah,
being here.
it's
Appreciate it, man.
awesome. It's
This is
always
fun.
great talking to you, Clark.
Absolutely. Well, that'll do it for this episode, Digital Recruiter
Yep.
Podcast. We'll leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff that you got to do on social media nowadays, and we'll catch you next time. See you guys.